The Great Hall of the Galactic Council had never been so quiet. Ambassador Hyun-woo stood at the center of the massive chamber, his blue skin pale with fear. Around him, representatives from 47 different worlds sat in their floating chairs, waiting for him to speak. But the words felt like poison in his throat. "The Koreth system is gone," Hyun-woo said finally. His voice echoed in the silence. "All 7 planets, 20 billion lives. Nothing left but empty space and dust." A wave of shocked whispers ran through the chamber. Counselor Jae-min, the oldest member of the council, leaned forward in his chair. His ancient face was lined with worry. How is this possible? The Koreth had the strongest defense fleet in that sector. Hyun-woo activated the holographic display in the center of the hall. The image showed what used to be a beautiful solar system. Now it was just a graveyard of broken ships floating in the dark. "The Void Swarm has returned," he said. The whispers stopped. Even the youngest council members knew that name from the old stories. The Void Swarm was the stuff of nightmares, an ancient enemy that had terrorized the galaxy 1,000,000 years ago before mysteriously disappearing. Most people thought it was just a legend. "That is impossible," said Counselor Mi-young, though her voice shook as she spoke. "The Void Swarm is a myth, a story we tell children to make them behave." "I wish that were true," Hyun-woo replied. He changed the hologram to show a recording from the battle. The council members watched in horror as massive black ships, each one the size of a moon, tore through the Koreth defense fleet like it was made of paper. The alien vessels moved like living things, bending and twisting in ways that should have been impossible. "They adapt," Hyun-woo explained as they watched. "Every weapon we used against them, they learned to defend against within minutes. Our best plasma cannons became useless. Our quantum torpedoes bounced off their hulls. They absorbed our shield technology and made it stronger." The recording showed the final moments of the battle. The Void Swarm ships opened like flowers, revealing massive mechanical mouths filled with grinding teeth. They began to consume the planets themselves, breaking them apart and feeding on the debris. 3 systems have fallen in the past month. Hyun-woo continued. The Koreth, the Zenthian colonies, the crystal worlds of the Lithoid Empire. Each time our combined fleets couldn't even slow them down. They're heading for the core worlds now. We estimate they'll reach the Council homeworlds within 6 months. Jamin stood up slowly, his old bones creaking. "What do our military experts say? Surely there must be some way to fight them." General Woo-seok, the Council's chief military advisor, activated his own display. Charts and battle plans filled the air around them. "We've run every simulation possible," he said grimly. "Combined, our 47 species have over 10,000 warships. Our best estimates say we might destroy 1 or 2 of their smaller vessels before they adapt to all our weapons. After that," he shrugged helplessly. "Then we run," suggested Counselor Ki-nam from the merchant guilds. "We evacuate the core worlds, move our people to the outer rim, hide until they go away." "They won't go away," Hyun-woo said. "The historical records are clear. The Void Swarm doesn't stop until they've consumed everything. Every planet, every star, every living thing in the galaxy. That's what they do." The hall fell silent again. These were the leaders of the most advanced civilizations in the galaxy, and they were helpless. Their technology, their weapons, their combined wisdom, none of it mattered against an enemy that could adapt to anything they threw at it. "Perhaps," said a quiet voice from the back of the chamber, "we're thinking about this the wrong way." Everyone turned to look at Counselor Young-ho, the keeper of the ancient archives. He rarely spoke during council meetings, preferring to spend his time with old books and forgotten histories. But now he stood, holding a strange crystalline tablet that seemed to glow with its own light. "What do you mean?" asked Jamin Young-ho, walked slowly to the center of the chamber. "I've been researching the old records, trying to find any information about how the Void Swarm was defeated before. Most of the historical data was lost, but I found this. He held up the crystal tablet. It's called the Chronicle of Champions. He activated the tablet, and strange symbols appeared in the air above them. The language was old, older than any of their current civilizations. It speaks of the last time the Void Swarm threatened the galaxy, Young Ho explained. Our ancestors tried everything we're trying now. Advanced technology, massive fleets, brilliant strategies, all of it failed. But then they did something desperate. Something that sounds impossible. What? Asked Mi-young, leaning forward. Young Ho's voice dropped to barely above a whisper. They called for champions from the Forbidden Worlds. The Death Worlds! Planets so dangerous that most galactic species would die there within days. Scoffs and nervous laughter echoed through the chamber. Death worlds were real. Planets with extreme gravity, toxic atmospheres, dangerous wildlife, or deadly weather. But the idea that anything useful could come from such places was ridiculous. Everyone knew that civilizations only developed on safe, peaceful worlds. You're talking about savages, said General Wu Xiok. Even if such beings exist, what could primitive creatures possibly do against the Void Swarm? Young Ho smiled sadly. According to the Chronicle, they did the impossible. But the records are incomplete. I don't know how, or even if the story is true. But it's the only hope we have. The debate that followed lasted for hours. Some council members called the idea foolish. Others said it was worth trying anything. But in the end, as the reports of more fallen worlds came in, even the skeptics had to admit they had no other choice. Very well, said Jamin finally. We'll send out the champion's call to every death world we can find, though I fear we're grasping at shadows. Deep in space, far from the civilized core worlds, a small blue planet circled its yellow star. On this world, creatures lived who breathed poison gas, drank acid rain, and somehow thrived in temperatures that would freeze or boil most galactic species. They called themselves humans, and they had never heard of the Void Swarm. But they were about to. Captain Nam Ho was drinking his morning coffee when the universe changed forever. The bitter liquid had just touched his lips when every screen in the command center of Luna Base started flashing red. Emergency signals filled the air with their harsh electronic screaming. "Sir," Sergeant Dal Nim called from her station. "We're receiving a transmission. It's not from Earth." Nam Ho set down his cup and walked over to the communications array. For 30 years, humanity had been alone among the stars. Their first contact with aliens had ended badly, very badly. Since then, Earth had chosen isolation, building their defenses and keeping quiet. But now, something was calling to them. "Put it through," Nam Ho ordered. The main screen flickered to life, showing the image of a blue-skinned being with large, frightened eyes. When it spoke, the computer translated its words into Korean. To any who can hear this message from the death worlds, the alien said, the galaxy is dying. We are the Galactic Council, and we call upon the champions of legend. Ancient texts speak of warriors from worlds that forge strength through suffering. If such beings exist, if you are real, please, help us. The Void Swarm has returned, and we cannot stop them. Billions are already dead. Soon, trillions more will follow. This is our final hope. The transmission ended, leaving the command center in complete silence. Nam Ho stared at the blank screen, his mind racing. Death worlds? Champions of legend? It sounded like something from a fantasy movie. "Sir," Dal Nim said quietly, "should we report this to Earth Command?" Before Nam Ho could answer, Admiral Sora's voice crackled through the communications system. "All unit commanders report to Earth Command immediately. Priority Alpha. This is not a drill." 2 hours later, Nam Ho sat in a room with Earth's top military leaders, scientists, and politicians. The alien message played on the main screen while Dr. Teho, Earth's best linguist, explained what they'd learned. "I've been analyzing their language patterns and cultural references," Dr. Tejo said, pointing at various symbols on his display. "This Galactic Council appears to be a federation of peaceful species. They've never experienced real warfare. Their military tactics are, well, there aren't any. They rely entirely on superior technology." "What about this void swarm they mentioned?" asked General Changmin. "From what I can piece together, it's some kind of adaptive enemy. It learns from every attack and becomes immune to whatever weapons are used against it. The Council species have never faced anything like it because they've never had to fight for their survival." President Insu leaned back in his chair. "And they think we can help them because we're from a death world? What does that even mean?" Dr. Yuna, Earth's leading xenobiologist, stood up. "I think I can answer that. I've been studying their environmental data. Most of these Council species come from planets with stable climates, low gravity, and abundant resources. Their idea of a dangerous planet is one where the temperature changes by more than 5 degrees. She brought up a comparison chart showing Earth next to several Council worlds. By their standards, Earth is impossibly hostile. We have ice ages, volcanic eruptions, hurricanes, earthquakes, and deadly predators. Our gravity is 3 times higher than their average. Our oxygen levels would be toxic to most of them. To them, we're not just from a death world, we are Deathworlders." Colonel Dong Hyun, a veteran of Earth's resource wars, studied the tactical data the aliens had sent. "Look at their battle plans," he said, highlighting sections of the alien military reports. "They fight like machines. Everything is calculated, predictable, orderly. No wonder this void swarm is beating them. It can adapt to patterns, but you can't adapt to chaos. So what are you suggesting?" asked Admiral So-Ra. Dong Hyun smiled grimly. "Humans have been fighting impossible odds for thousands of years. We've fought wars in deserts, jungles, frozen wastelands, and burning cities. We've learned to use everything as a weapon. The weather, the terrain, even our own bodies. While they're trying to fight this thing with better technology, maybe we need to fight it with better tactics." Engineer Wu Jin had been quietly working at his computer during the discussion. Now he looked up with excitement. "I think I can reverse engineer their communication system. If we can build our own transmitter, we could contact them directly." "The question is," said President Insu, "do we want to get involved? This isn't our fight. We could just ignore the message and hope the problem doesn't reach us." The room fell silent. Everyone knew that isolation had kept Earth safe for 3 decades. Getting involved in galactic politics could expose humanity to new dangers. "With respect, sir," Namho said quietly, "I don't think we can ignore this. If this void swarm really does consume everything in its path, it will eventually reach Earth anyway. At least this way we might have allies to fight alongside." Dr. Tejo nodded. "There's something else. The message wasn't sent just to us. They broadcast it to every death world they could find. That means there might be others out there, other species that have been forged by hardship like we have." Admiral So-Ra stood up. "Very well. I'm authorizing a volunteer mission. We'll send a small fleet to make contact with this Galactic Council. Captain Namho, you'll command the mission. Choose your crew carefully. This will likely be a one-way trip." Over the next 2 weeks, preparations moved quickly. Wu Jin worked around the clock to build a faster-than-light communication system. Based on the alien technology, Commander Haiwan assembled a volunteer strike force from Earth's best soldiers, engineers, and scientists. They all knew the risks, but not one person backed down. The ships they chose weren't pretty. Unlike the sleek vessels shown in the alien transmissions, human spacecraft were built for function over form. Thick armor, redundant systems, and enough firepower to level a small city. They looked like flying fortresses, ugly but incredibly tough. As the small fleet prepared to launch, Namho recorded a message to send ahead of them. "To the Galactic Council," he said, looking directly into the camera. "This is Captain Namho of the Human Defense Force. We received your call for champions. Earth is sending what help we can. We're not the most advanced species, and we don't have the biggest fleet. But we've never met a fight we wouldn't take, and we've never met an enemy we couldn't find a way to beat. Hold on, help is coming. The message was transmitted toward the galactic core at faster-than-light speed. Then the human fleet followed, carrying Earth's hopes and humanity's promise into the dark between the stars. Behind them, Earth continued its preparations. If the small fleet failed, the entire planet would need to be ready for war. But Namho wasn't thinking about failure as he watched the stars stream past his ship's windows. Somewhere out there, the galaxy was crying for champions. And for better or worse, the Deathworlders were answering the call. The human fleet arrived at the Koreth system to find hell waiting for them. What had once been 7 beautiful worlds was now a field of debris floating in space. Broken ships drifted like ghosts among the wreckage, their hulls torn open and their crews long dead. "By all the gods," whispered Lieutenant Seok Jin as he stared at the destruction through the bridge windows. "What could do this?" Captain Namho studied the tactical displays. The Galactic Council fleet was retreating again, their remaining ships limping away from another losing battle. At their head was a massive vessel that looked like a crystal palace floating in space, clearly the flagship of someone important. "Open a channel," Namho ordered. The main screen flickered to life, showing a tall, elegant being with silver skin and 4 arms. Her face was marked with the kind of exhaustion that came from watching too many friends die. "I am Fleet Commander Bo Ram of the Zenthari Defense Force," she said. Her voice was tired but proud. "If you are here to help us run away faster, you're welcome to join our retreat. If you're here to fight, then you're about to die. Captain Namho, Human Defense Force," Namho replied. "We're here because you asked for champions. What's the tactical situation?" Bo Ram's eyes widened slightly. She had clearly never seen anything like humans before. "You're from one of the Death Worlds? The Council said they sent messages, but we never expected—" She shook her head. "It doesn't matter. The Void Swarm has already adapted to every weapon we have. They're impossible to kill." "Nothing is impossible to kill," said Colonel Dong Hyun, stepping into view. "You just haven't found the right way yet." On the screen, Bo Ram's translator seemed to struggle with his words. The concept of finding a way to kill the impossible didn't translate well into her language. "Look," she said finally, "I respect your courage. But these creatures learn from every battle. Every weapon we use, they develop defenses against. Every tactic we try, they counter. We've lost 17 fleets already." Tactical Officer Subin had been studying the battle recordings that Bo Ram's ship transmitted. "Sir," she said quietly, "they're fighting them in open space. Ship-to-ship combat. That's playing to the swarm's advantages." Dong Hyun nodded. "We need to change the battlefield. Bring them somewhere we have the advantage." "What do you mean?" asked Bo Ram. Namho smiled grimly. "There's a volcanic world about 2 light years from here. High gravity, toxic atmosphere, unstable terrain. Perfect for what we have in mind." "You want to fight them on a planetary surface?" Bo Ram sounded horrified. "That's suicide. The environment alone would kill most of my crew in minutes." "Not ours," said Commander Haiwan. "That's exactly the kind of place humans call home." The plan they developed over the next few hours would have been called insane by any military strategist in the galaxy. Instead of running or trying to outfight the swarm in space, they would lure them down to the planet Keth 9, a world so hostile that it had never been colonized by anyone. Keth 9 was a nightmare of volcanic activity, crushing gravity and poisonous gas. The temperature swung between freezing and boiling depending on whether you were in sunlight or shadow. Acid rain fell constantly, and the ground shook with earthquakes every few hours. "My people can't fight there," Bo Ram protested. "The environment will kill them before the enemy does." Then don't bring your people, Dong Hyun replied. Bring your ships and provide fire support from orbit. Leave the ground fighting to us. The swarm took the bait. When the human ships started broadcasting on all frequencies from the planet's surface, pretending to establish a base there, the alien creatures came hunting. 5 massive bioships descended through the toxic atmosphere, their living hulls, adapting to the hostile environment within minutes. Sergeant Wu Young crouched behind a ridge of volcanic rock, watching the enemy ships land. Around him, human soldiers checked their weapons and prepared for battle. Mixed in with the humans were a few brave aliens who had insisted on fighting alongside them, though most were already struggling with the planet's conditions. Remember, Wu Young said into his radio, they adapt to our weapons, but they can't adapt to the planet itself. Use the environment. Make the ground work for us. The first swarm creatures that emerged from their ships were like nothing anyone had ever seen. They looked like a cross between machines and living tissue, constantly shifting and changing as they moved. When the human soldiers opened fire, the creature's armor began adapting to the bullets within seconds. But Wu Young had expected this. Fall back to position 2, he ordered. Lead them into the thermal valley. The humans retreated, drawing the swarm creatures deeper into the volcanic landscape. The aliens followed, their biomechanical bodies changing to handle the increasing heat and toxic gases. What they couldn't adapt to was the trap that waited for them. Lieutenant Ki Wan had spent 2 days placing explosive charges throughout the thermal valley. When the swarm creatures reached the center of the kill zone, he triggered them all at once. The explosions weren't meant to kill the creatures directly. They were meant to collapse the valley walls and dump millions of tons of molten lava onto the enemy. Even beings that could adapt to any weapon couldn't adapt to being buried under a flowing river of liquid rock. First kill confirmed, Ki Wan reported with satisfaction. The big ugly ones don't like lava. But the swarm learned quickly. The next wave of creatures that landed had thick, heat-resistant shells and moved differently, trying to avoid the obvious trap zones. They were adapting to human tactics, just like they had adapted to alien weapons. That's when Medic Ji-hoon made a discovery that would change everything. He was treating a wounded Zenthari soldier when he noticed something strange about the swarms. Blood samples. Sir, he called to Colonel Dong-hyun over the radio. I think I know why they adapt so fast. They're sharing information somehow. Each creature that gets hurt or killed sends data back to the others. They all learn from every encounter. Can we disrupt the signal? Dong-hyun asked. Maybe, but I've got a better idea. What if we make sure they learn the wrong things? The new strategy was pure human cunning. Instead of trying to hide their tactics, the humans started using fake ones. They set up obvious ambushes that were meant to fail, used weapons that looked deadly but weren't, and generally made sure the swarm learned information that would make them weaker, not stronger. When the swarm creatures adapted to defend against flame weapons, the humans switched to ice attacks. When they learned to resist explosives, the humans used acid, but the real genius was in the false patterns. Every fake lesson taught the swarm to expect attacks that never came and to defend against threats that didn't exist. Dr. Yoon-ah, working from the orbital command ship, watched the battle with growing excitement. It's working, she reported. Their adaptation process is getting confused. They're developing defenses against imaginary threats while leaving themselves open to real ones. The tide of the battle turned when Commander Hai Wan made the ultimate sacrifice. Her ship, the Resilience, had taken heavy damage from the swarm's bioweapons. Instead of retreating, she aimed it directly at the largest enemy vessel and activated the self-destruct sequence. The aliens watching from their ships were horrified. In their cultures, losing a valuable starship was a catastrophe to be avoided at any cost. But to humans, ships were just tools. And sometimes the best use of a tool was to break it on the enemy's head. The explosion tore through the swarm. Mothership, proving that even adaptive armor couldn't withstand the power of a small star contained in a metal shell. The remaining swarm creatures began to retreat, their bioships lifting off from the planet's surface. "Let them go," ordered Namho as Subin prepared to pursue. "They'll carry the false information back to the rest of the swarm. Now they think they know how humans fight." Boram's voice came over the communications channel, filled with disbelief. You actually won. On a death world, against creatures that have destroyed 17 of our fleets, you won." "It's what we do," Namho replied simply. "We survive impossible places and fight unwinnable battles. The question is, are you ready to learn how?" For the first time since the war began, hope flickered in the eyes of the galaxy's defenders. The Deathworlders had shown that the impossible could be defeated. Now they had to teach the rest of the galaxy how to fight like humans. The real war was just beginning. The asteroid that would become New Sparta had been nothing special before the war. Just another chunk of rock floating in space, too small to mine and too far from any trade routes to matter. But General Chang Min saw potential where others saw emptiness. "Here," he said, pointing at the holographic display in the command center. "We'll build the academy here, far enough from the front lines to be safe, close enough to get reinforcements to the battle zones quickly." Admiral Sora studied the plans Chang Min had drawn up. The asteroid would be hollowed out and turned into a massive training facility. Artificial gravity, atmospheric processors, and every type of environment the galaxy could throw at them, all contained within a single base. "The Galactic Council is sending us their best people," Sora said. "Scientists, soldiers, pilots, every species that wants to learn how to fight like humans." "Are we sure this will work?" asked Dr. Teho. "These species have been peaceful for thousands of years. Some of them have never even seen violence, let alone participated in it." Chang Min smiled. "Every human was peaceful once, too. Then life taught us otherwise. We'll just have to teach them what Earth taught us." The first students arrived 3 weeks later. Instructor Hei Young watched them step off their transport ships with a mixture of curiosity and concern. There were tall, elegant Xantharians with their forearms and silver skin, crystal-bodied lithoids who communicated through light patterns, tiny Valerians who could barely lift their own weight in Earth gravity, and dozens of other species, all looking terrified but determined. "Welcome to New Sparta," Hei Young announced, to the assembled group. "I know this is scary for most of you. Your species have lived in peace for generations. You've never had to fight for anything. But the Void Swarm doesn't care about your peaceful ways. They'll kill you just as quickly as they've killed everyone else." A young Valerian named Sunja raised one of her thin blue hands. "Instructor, my people have never taken a life. Our religion forbids violence of any kind. How can we learn to fight when everything we believe tells us it's wrong?" Hei Young nodded, understanding. "I'm not here to change your beliefs. I'm here to give you the tools to protect what you believe in. The swarm wants to destroy everything you hold dear. Your families, your art, your entire way of life. Sometimes the most peaceful thing you can do is stop something evil from hurting innocent people." The training was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Combat engineer Jun Ho taught the crystal-bodied lithoids how to use their own bodies as weapons. Their living crystal could be shaped into blades, shields, or even explosive charges. It went against everything their peaceful culture had taught them. But they learned. "Your body is not just a shell," Junho explained to his lithoid students. "It's a tool, a weapon, a shield for those who can't protect themselves. The swarm sees you as pretty rocks to be consumed. Show them your diamonds, beautiful, but hard enough to cut through anything." The Xantharians were natural pilots, but they had never flown anything more dangerous than a luxury transport. Flight instructor Sang Wook changed that quickly. "Forget everything you know about flying," he told them as they climbed into modified human fighters. "These ships aren't meant to be comfortable or safe. They're meant to kill the enemy before the enemy kills you. Sometimes that means doing things that will damage your ship, Sometimes it means flying straight into danger. Can you do that? The Zentharian pilot Kyung-soo gripped his control stick with all 4 hands. My people build ships to last forever. The idea of deliberately damaging them is... He struggled to find the words. Necessary, Sang-wook finished. A ship is just metal and circuits. Your life and the lives of everyone you're protecting are more important than any machine. But it was the psychological training that proved most challenging. Species that had never known fear had to learn courage. Beings who had never faced death had to learn how to risk everything. Dr. Soon-ja, a Valerian psychiatrist, worked with human therapist In-soo to help the alien students cope with their new reality. Many of them are experiencing what you would call combat stress, she reported to General Chang-min. But it's different from human trauma. They're not just afraid of dying. They're afraid of becoming something their ancestors would not recognize. How do we help them? Chang-min asked. We show them that strength doesn't mean becoming monsters, In-soo replied. Humans have been fighting for thousands of years, but you've never lost your humanity. That's what makes you different from the swarm. The first real test came when a swarm scout fleet attacked the mining colony at Rigel 7. Captain Yujin led a mixed squadron of human and alien pilots to intercept them. It was the first time any of the Academy students had faced real combat. The Lethoid pilot Dalneem froze when she saw the swarm ships. They were exactly as terrifying as the training. Videos had shown massive, organic-looking vessels that moved like living creatures. I can't do this, she whispered over the radio. They're too frightening. Fear is normal. Yujin's voice came back, calm and steady. Fear keeps you alive, but don't let it control you. Remember your training. Remember why you're here. The battle was chaotic. The swarm ships adapted to the squadron's weapons quickly, just as they always did. But the mixed human-alien tactics proved effective. While the human pilots drew the enemy's attention with aggressive attacks, the alien pilots used their species' unique advantages to strike from unexpected angles. Dalneem found her courage when she saw a swarm ship about to destroy a transport full of refugees. She dove her fighter straight at the enemy vessel, transforming her crystal body into a living missile. The impact punched through the swarm ship's hull, saving hundreds of lives. Target destroyed, she reported, her voice shaking but proud. The refugees are safe. But victory came at a cost. 3 pilots didn't make it back to base. Hero Sang-wook died when he manually held his ship's reactor core together long enough to evacuate a damaged station. Captain In-soo led a suicide charge against a swarm mothership, buying time for civilian evacuations. Each human death inspired a dozen alien students to push harder, fight better, and risk more. They began to understand that courage wasn't the absence of fear. It was doing what was right despite being afraid. Dr. Yuna made the breakthrough that would change the war. Working with Zentharian scientist Minho, she discovered something crucial about the swarm's adaptation process. They're not just learning from combat, she explained to the gathered commanders. They're storing every piece of tactical information in a collective memory. Every time they adapt to a new weapon or tactic, that information is shared with the entire swarm across the galaxy. So they get smarter with every battle, said Admiral Sora grimly. That explains how they've been staying ahead of us. But it also creates a vulnerability, Minho added. If we could poison that collective memory with false information, we could turn their greatest strength against them. The plan that emerged was audacious even by human standards. Instead of just teaching aliens to fight like humans, they would coordinate a galaxy-wide campaign of deliberate misinformation. Every battle would be designed not just to win, but to teach the swarm the wrong lessons. Student pilot Woo Seok came up with the nickname that stuck, the Big Lie. Every human and human-trained pilot would use the same fake tactics, the same false weaknesses, the same predictable patterns. The swarm would learn to counter strategies that existed only to be countered. As reports came in from across the galaxy, it became clear that the strategy was working. Swarm fleets were developing defenses against weapons that didn't exist and preparing for attacks that would never come. Their adaptation advantage was becoming a liability, but success came with a price that cut deep into human hearts. To defeat the swarm completely, humanity would have to sacrifice the very thing that made them special: their unpredictability. The final battle will require perfect coordination, Admiral Sora explained to her commanders. Every human, every trained alien, following the exact same battle plan. No improvisation, no creative solutions, no human chaos. General Chang Min understood what she was asking. You want us to fight like machines? For one battle? Yes. It's the only way to deliver. The killing blow to their collective consciousness. The greatest warriors in human history would have to become everything they had always fought against: predictable, organized, and completely without the wild creativity that had carried them through every previous war. But if it would save the galaxy, they would do it. Because that's what champions did. They sacrificed everything for others, even when everything included the very essence of who they were. The nexus of stars had been beautiful once. Ancient records showed it as a place where 7 different colored suns danced around each other in perfect harmony, their combined light creating rainbows that could be seen from 1,000 light years away. Now it was the heart of darkness, where the original void swarm had first entered the galaxy 1,000,000 years ago. Fleet Admiral Wan Sik stood on the bridge of the Indomitable, watching as the largest military force in galactic history assembled around him. Ships from 47 different species filled the space between the stars: sleek Xantharian cruisers, massive lithoid crystal vessels, tiny but deadly human fighters, and hundreds of other designs, all of them crewed by beings who had learned to fight like Deathworlders. Final ship count? Wan Sik asked his communications officer. 12,437 vessels, sir, replied Lieutenant Yunji, plus support craft and supply ships, every functional warship left in the galaxy. Wan Sik nodded grimly. It sounded like a lot, but they were facing the entire void swarm, millions of biomechanical ships that had been growing and adapting for over a year. The enemy had consumed dozens of star systems, using the raw material to build an armada that dwarfed anything the galaxy had ever seen. Sir, called Tactical Officer Byung-ho from his station, long-range sensors are picking up the swarm fleet. They're massive, sir. The main screen filled with an image that made even hardened veterans gasp. The void swarm had built ships the size of moons, covered in weapons that pulsed with organic energy. Smaller vessels swirled around the giants, like schools of metal fish. There were so many of them that they blocked out the light of the distant stars. All ships, this is Fleet Admiral Wan Sik, he broadcast to the assembled fleet. Today we end this war, not with superior technology or overwhelming numbers, but with something the swarm has never faced: the united will of a galaxy that refuses to die quietly. The response came back from thousands of ships at once, human voices mixed with alien languages, but the message was the same. They were ready. At the heart of the formation, Marshal Byung-ho prepared for the most dangerous mission of the war. His ship, the Prometheus, had been modified with experimental technology that would allow it to penetrate the swarm's central command vessel. With him were 50 of humanity's greatest champions, soldiers, scientists, and engineers who had volunteered for what everyone knew was a suicide mission. Remember, Byung-ho said to his crew as they made final preparations, we're not carrying weapons or explosives. We're carrying something much more dangerous: pure human chaos. Commander Yunji, his second-in-command, double-checked the upload systems one last time. The virus is ready, sir. Every piece of human tactical unpredictability we could digitize. Every creative solution, every impossible victory, every time we've done something that couldn't be done. Will it work? Asked Dr. Shin Young, the mission's science officer. Yun-ji smiled grimly. The swarm's collective consciousness is designed to process and adapt to patterns. Human creativity doesn't follow patterns. It's going to be like forcing a computer to divide by zero. It should cause a cascade failure throughout their entire network. The battle began as every space battle did, with long-range weapons fire lighting up the darkness between the stars. But this fight was different. For the first time since the war began, the Allied fleet fought with perfect coordination. Every ship followed the same battle plan. Every pilot used identical tactics. Every weapon fired in precise sequence. The Void Swarm, expecting the chaotic human fighting style they had learned to counter, found themselves facing something completely different. Their adapted defenses were useless against attacks they had never seen before. Fleet Commander Bo-Ram, now commanding a mixed human-Xantharian squadron, watched in amazement as her ships tore through the swarm's front lines. "It's working," she reported. "They're not adapting fast enough. Their defenses are configured for human chaos, not human discipline." But the victory came at a terrible cost. Captain Nam-Ho, who had led humanity's first contact with the galaxy, died when his ship's reactor overloaded while ramming a swarm mothership. Pilot after pilot followed his example, using their vessels as guided missiles when their weapons ran out. "They're learning," reported Tactical Officer Su Bin from her position aboard the command ship. "The swarm is starting to adapt to our coordinated attacks. We don't have much time." That was the signal Byung-ho had been waiting for. The Prometheus broke formation and dove straight toward the swarm's command vessel, a massive biomechanical construct that pulsed with the collected consciousness of the entire enemy fleet. The defensive fire was overwhelming. Smaller swarm ships swarmed around the Prometheus like antibodies attacking an infection, but the human ship had been built for this one purpose: to survive long enough to reach its target. "Hull breach on Deck 7, reported Engineer Ki-Wan, as the ship shook under enemy fire. "We're losing atmosphere, but the upload systems are still operational." "Life support is failing," added Medic Ji-hoon. "We've got maybe 10 minutes before the air runs out." Byung-ho gripped his command chair as another explosion rocked the ship. "Then we'd better make them count." The Prometheus smashed through the outer shell of the swarm command ship, its armored hull designed to punch through biomechanical armor. Inside, they found a nightmare of living technology: walls that breathed, floors that pulsed with alien heartbeats, and corridors that tried to seal themselves shut. "There," Yunji pointed to a massive organic computer at the center of the vessel. "That's their collective consciousness. Every adaptation, every piece of tactical knowledge, it's all stored in there." The upload began immediately. Terabytes of human unpredictability flooded into the swarm's collective memory. Every crazy plan that had ever worked, every impossible victory. Every time humans had succeeded by doing exactly what logic said they shouldn't do, the effect was immediate and catastrophic. Across the galaxy, swarm vessels began to malfunction as their collective consciousness tried to process information that couldn't be processed. Ships designed for perfect adaptation found themselves adapting to contradictory data. "It's working," Dr. Shin Young reported, even as the biomechanical walls began closing in around them. "The cascade failure is spreading through their entire network." But the swarm wasn't finished yet. The command ship's immune system recognized the human crew as a threat and began flooding the chamber with acidic gas. One by one, Byung-ho's team fell, their sacrifice buying precious seconds to complete the upload. "Upload at 90%, Yunji reported, her voice weak from the poisonous atmosphere. 95, 98. Marshal Byung-ho was the last one conscious when the upload reached 100%. With his dying breath, he activated the ship's self-destruct system, ensuring that the virus would spread to every corner of the swarm's collective mind. The explosion that followed was visible from light years away, but more important was what happened next. Across the galaxy, void swarm ships began turning on each other as their collective consciousness tore itself apart. Creatures that had been perfectly coordinated for millions of years suddenly couldn't agree on basic tactics. The war ended not with a final battle, but with the enemy defeating itself. Ships that had devoured entire star systems now floated dead in space, their crews driven insane by contradictory instructions from their own collective mind. 3 months later, Counselor Ju Wan stood before the Memorial of Champions on the rebuilt world of New Earth. The memorial was simple, a wall of black stone inscribed with names, human names and alien names side by side, all of them beings who had died to save a galaxy. They came from a world we called impossible, Ju Wan said to the assembled crowd. They lived in conditions that would kill most of us. They fought wars we couldn't imagine. And when we asked for help, they gave us everything, their knowledge, their courage, and finally their lives. Captain Shin Young, one of the few original human champions to survive the war, accepted command of the new Deathworlder Corps. The organization would include humans and aliens working together, carrying forward the lessons learned in blood and sacrifice. What makes someone a champion? She asked the mixed crowd of humans and aliens who had volunteered for the Corps. It's not strength or intelligence or advanced technology. It's the willingness to stand up when standing up seems impossible. It's choosing to fight for others, even when you have nothing to gain and everything to lose. The galaxy had learned that champions weren't born on perfect worlds with ideal conditions. They were forged in the fire of hardship, shaped by struggle, and defined by their willingness to sacrifice for others. Years later, when new threats arose, the galaxy was ready. Not because they had better weapons or stronger ships, but because they had learned to fight like Deathworlders. They had learned that the impossible was just another word for difficult, and difficult was something that could be overcome with enough courage and determination. The Void Swarm was gone, but its defeat had given the galaxy something more valuable than victory. It had given them hope, unity, and the knowledge that no enemy was too strong to defeat if good beings stood together against it. Ambassador Hyun Woo, who had sent the first desperate plea for help, visited Earth one final time.